You're listening to 15 Minutes of Flame with Robert Phoenix.
Well, good morning. This is Robert Phoenix, broadcasting to you live once again from lovely Fredericksburg, Texas, where I have been wanting to share with you people out there that they're restarting Jade Helm, and it's right here in Fredericksburg. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later here on the program. I'll address that. But before I do, we're going to get into the whole topic around Tommy Robinson, which really caused a bit of a firestorm yesterday. It's the first time I have ever had people call me a traitor, a backstabber, tell me to fuck off and die, bitch. Very interesting. Very, very interesting. That Sagittarian full moon was kicking in pretty hardcore, wasn't it? I think so. So it was an interesting day. It was a very interesting day. It was an interesting day for free speech all around now, wasn't it? Yes, indeed. I want to talk about the Tommy Robinson thing, and I want to talk about it in the context of free speech. And I've spent a lot of time over the last let me see here. Just got to go into my Facebook page. Give me 1 second. I got to retrieve a. There we go. It's a pretty important document. Now, a lot of you people are going to disagree with what I have to say anyway. So I'm okay with that. I'm okay with it. And some of you people who may agree with me with a lot of things that I say, you may disagree with me too. So there could be a lot of disagreement on today's show. And I'm okay with that. By the way, I'm doing one more show tomorrow. It's kind of the wrap up of this kind of trilogy, the Tommy Robinson trilogy. And then I will be taking the majority of the summer off. I'll be working on my website, a new website, new content. I'll still be doing the Sunday night live streams. And then, let's see, 2 weeks from now, I'll return with the Friday Farcast. I'm not going to do the Friday Farcast this Friday. Next Friday, I'm going to be gone. I've got a big appointment I have to attend to. But the third Friday out, of course, the final Friday with Steve and Chris. The Friday Farcast is going to be interviews from here on out through July. So I'll be doing the Friday Farcast, and I'll be doing the Sunday night live stream. I'll also be posting more astrology material. That'll be on YouTube. So I'm not going away entirely, but I'm going to be kind of regrouping. When I come back, I will have a separate 15 Minutes of Flame website. And part of the reason why I'm going to be taking so much time is I got to figure out how to move my 15 Minutes of Flame videos and audios to a separate YouTube channel. So I'm going to be doing some segmentation. It is the month of Gemini, so I'll be segmenting my material and going to be more of a kind of a church and state deal. That doesn't mean that they too won't cross over. You'll still get to hear 15 Minutes of Flame. It's just it's gonna come back in kind of a different shape, different format, and it'll happen right around the 23rd of July when the sun is in Leo and up in my 9th house when I want to launch this. I've got a whole I've got a whole journey of the sun through my 8th house, and I want to be in my 8th house doing some 8th house work. This is all about astrology, how to use the chart. Currently, Mars is in the sign of Aquarius. That's in my 3rd house, and that's local. So I'm going to put a lot of my energy into the local stuff here, which is going to be the fight against fluoride here in Fredericksburg. And also now the revelation that Jade Helm is restarted, and Fredericksburg has agreed to allow troops from Fort Bragg to come into Fredericksburg. I wonder if Alex Jones is actually even talking about this. I'm not sure. There are some Alex Jones listeners out there. Maybe you can chime in and let me know if he's actually even covered this. But anyway, tomorrow will be the wrap-up show. I'm sure I'll have some more flack, some more flame, some more hate, anger, vitriol coming in my direction. It's very shocking when it does happen, you know. It really is. It takes me a while to kind of assimilate it and say, okay, well, what just went on here? And by the way, I've managed to piss off in, I'd say, the last week. I've managed to piss off what appears to be the alt-right. And I'm going to get into the alt-right versus the alt-light. I'm going to talk about the difference between the two, and I'm going to bring something up which does have to do with freedom of speech. That'll be kind of a theme in today's show. So I've managed to piss those people off. I've managed to piss off the QAnon people because, you know, I'm not a real believer in the QAnon fairy tale. And yesterday, apparently, I managed to piss off Cameron Kasky's father, Jeff Kasky, over on Twitter, because I called him. He was like cheerleading for David Hogg on David Hogg's Twitter feed, and I called him out. I called him out on his failed adoption business. And there's a lot more to Jeff Kasky, by the way. But he got really upset, and so I started to get involved in Jeff Kasky's material. And so I managed to piss off, let's see, people on the left, people on the right, people on the kind of far spiritual, you know, QAnon woo right. So I managed to piss off a lot of people. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. You know, at least there was enough to go around, right? There's enough to go around. And I'm sure I would say Jeff Kasky's the left. So I got the left, the right, and maybe the center. Although I really wouldn't call any of them truly the center. So let's get into this whole. So yesterday, I posted something about Tommy Robinson, this whole thing being a false flag. And the reason why is because of Tommy Robinson's affiliations and what Tommy Robinson on the street has been doing for a very long time, which is basically running cover for the Zionists. Tommy Robinson calls himself a Zionist. I am not down with Zionism. I'm sorry. Okay, if that pisses you off, I'm sorry. You can tell me to fuck off and die. I don't give a shit. I am not down with social Marxism. And if you don't like that, if you think that I'm hateful and I'm bigoted and fill in the blank and you want to come at me with that, fine, go ahead. I don't give a shit, okay? What I am into is the truth. And sometimes the truth is nuanced, but it is always the truth. And that is something that we as humans are here to understand. In my playbook, this is my playbook. It may not be your playbook, but in my playbook, it says we're here to understand truth and freedom. And we become acquainted with them when we understand where the two of those are no longer applicable, or we find ourselves in chains and to some degree muted. Now, was all the flack and the heat yesterday an attempt to mute me? Maybe. But I'm not going to get muted. And that's the fact, Jack. So let's talk about what actually happened with Tommy Robinson. Now, a lot of people fail to kind of understand the nuance here. Okay? Let's take away from the fact that Tommy Robinson is supposedly the only person in England, which I find hard to believe, exposing the gang rapes of the Muslims, which I do not condone. Like, I was told that I condone gang rape and sodomizing. Of course I don't. Of course I don't. But Tommy Robinson is he's going after the symptom, right? And not the cause. And most people don't understand that. Most people can't dig a few inches deeper to really, really wrap their head around why this is happening and how it's happened and how it's actually tearing people apart, which is part of the plan, okay? But most people just want to check in. They want to check that box. Hate motherfucking Muslims. And fuck you if you don't understand this. And I hope your daughter or son gets right. I mean, okay, that is the level of political discourse, right? Yeah, you can say that. Hey, I support that. If you want to say that, great. Go ahead. We're to get into Roseanne and what she said, and I've got some comments about that too. Go ahead, say that. It's your right. Just like it's my right, and we're going to disagree. The difference between you and me is I'm not going to come out and say, fuck you, bitch, die because you disagree with me. And that somehow your priority, your moral prioritizing outranks mine. Bullshit. Absolute bullshit. But you can say it. That's fine. Absolutely fine. That's why this country exists. And that's why I can reply to that and answer to that. And you may not like my reply. Now, perhaps, if you're still with me after yesterday and you haven't jumped ship because I didn't confirm your bias. I'm not here to confirm people's bias. I'm here in my own experience, my own exploration to uncover the truth. And it may not be your truth, and that's fine. And you can go find somebody else to listen to. And you can just get confirmation bias every fucking day. Okay, so if I say something, I may challenge what your confirmation bias is. Challenge mine. But challenge mine in a way that is actually intellectually and spiritually accountable. Most people can't do it. It takes work. So let's return to the scene of the crime. What did Tommy Robinson do? I'll tell you what he did. He interfered with a trial. I'm going to read this to you. I posted this on Facebook. It's called The Secret Barrister. It's actually a really interesting post. I'm going to read it to you, and it's going to take me, I don't know, maybe 5 minutes, but I'm going to read it all the way through so you can understand what happened and why Tommy Robinson is in jail. Here we go. And if you don't like this, if you think that I'm a pro-Islamic cuck, why don't you just listen through? Because this is the law, theoretically, in quotes, in England. And by the way, let me just say this. If I was an English person, and there are all these Americans screaming bloody murder, and let's take him down, and let's find this judge and hang the judge. And if I was an English person that lived in Great Britain, I'd find that totally insulting. It's like, stay the fuck out of our business. Just like when the Brits or anybody else from any other country come in here and start, coming down our throats about the Second Amendment and gun rights. This is not your country. Stay out. And I've gotten into heated stuff on Twitter with people not from the United States barking on us about the Second Amendment, how guns are dangerous, and want to take away. It's not your country. Okay? You see how that works? I'm here standing up for the Second Amendment because I do believe that Americans have the right to bear arms. Let me tell you something else. I actually believe that Americans have the right to form militias. And we've abrogated that right. And as a result of that, it's probably leading us closer and closer and closer to a police state because we handed all that over. Okay, do you like that? Maybe if you're still with me, you can kind of stroke your chin. Well, maybe he has a point there. And I'll tell you one of the reasons why England is having a challenging time with all this. There's no guns. I'm sorry. Period. End of story. If the English people had guns, we would be having a different dialogue. Period. I'll give you another example. The mayor of London came to the United States. Happens to be Muslim. He was at South by Southwest. Gave a keynote speech. And one of the things he talked about was cracking down on hate speech. And it was all about the internet. And it's like, I'm sorry, you live in London. You're the mayor of London. What are you doing here, coming here and basically telling us that our First Amendment rights are no longer applicable? Please give me a break. You see, it's like, and I'm not sitting here to like you quote that to make all these people yesterday who came after me feel better. No, that's how I feel. That's how I've always felt. Countries should be allowed to deal with their own business without any interference. Whether it's Great Britain or Syria, okay? Let them deal with it. Get out. If you're a real nationalist, you let them do their thing. You trust their process because that's their process. We have our process, which is a fucked up process anyway. All right, here we go. What on earth happened to poor Tommy Robinson? 10 things you should know. I'm going to skip the intro. It's a little slanted because they're not really happy with Tommy Robinson. Here we go. Why was Tommy Robinson arrested? Robinson was arrested outside Leeds Crown Court, having video recorded a number of men, including defendants involved in a live trial, entering the court building and live streaming the footage on Facebook in what he claimed was an attempt at legitimate court report. West Yorkshire Police, having been alerted to his activities, arrested Lennon at the scene. That's his name, Stephen Yaxley Lennon. He's not even Tommy Robinson. But Tommy Robinson sounds like a nice kind of alt-right white name, doesn't it? Tommy Robinson. Sounds like a boxer. Entered this quarter at 5'9", weighing 150 pounds, Tommy Robinson. It's a lot better than now in this quarter at 5'9", 159 pounds, Stephen Yaxley Lennon. Right? I mean, it just doesn't sound quite the same. Anyway. Lennon at the scene. The initial report suggested he was arrested for a suspected breach of the peace. But what is now clear from the facts published today is that his actions in broadcasting details about the trial were in breach of reporting restrictions. Tommy Robinson broke the law. Okay, I'm not always a big law guy. Trust me. There are laws that I think are freaking ridiculous. But there's a reason why this law is in place, and we're going to find out why. What are reporting restrictions? The starting point of our criminal justice system is that justice must be seen to be done. However, the law provides for exceptions to open justice, known generally as reporting restrictions. Reporting restrictions apply in a wide range of situations, from automatic restrictions preventing the identification of a complainant in a sexual allegation to restrictions preventing reporting of youth court proceedings, to discretionary restrictions protecting the identity of child witnesses in the adult courts. Further details, if you're interested, can be found here. There's a link there. One breed of restriction order is something called a postponement order. Under Section 4.2 of the Contempt of Court Act 1981, postponement orders are not unusual, particularly when there are a series of linked trials. For example, where allegations of drug networks involving 30 defendants are concerned, there will be several trials, it not being physically possible to accommodate 30 defendants in a single courtroom. To avoid jurors having their deliberations contaminated by what they might read or hear about, the earlier linked trials, reporting all of them, is often postponed until the end. Where there is a separate but related issue, such as a contempt of court involving a third party, this can also be subject of Section 4.2 order. The test is, would a fair, accurate, and contemporaneous report of the proceedings or part thereof, published in good faith, create substantial risk of prejudice to the administration of justice in those other proceedings? Is an order postponing the publication of such reports necessary, and are its terms proportionate? Would such an order eliminate the risk of prejudice to the administration of justice? Could less restrictive measures achieve the objective? On the specific facts of this case, does the public interest in protecting the administration of justice outweigh the strong public interest in open justice? This is what we had here. The judge had imposed a postponement order preventing the media from reporting on the ongoing trial until all linked trials had concluded, because there were multiple trials, multiple offenders in this case. Breaching a reporting restriction amounts to a contempt of court, which is what Yaxley Lennon admitted doing. He admitted it. All you Tommy lovers, he admitted it, okay? But I heard Tommy Robinson was arrested for a breach of the peace. What is a breach of the peace, and how is a breach of the peace caused by someone simply filming? Police officers have common law powers. Now listen, I am not siding with the police. I'm not siding with the police state. But unless Tommy Robinson knows some kick-ass natural law that can circumvent and have a counter effect on what's going on in a Crown Court law, he's fucked because he's playing by their rules. But he's not bright enough to understand that. Sorry. Let me continue to read this. Police officers have common law powers, powers not set out in statute. To arrest somebody where a breach of the peace is committed or where the officer reasonably believes it will be committed in the immediate future as to what constitutes a breach of the peace, it is defined in case law as follows. There is a breach of the peace whenever harm is actually done or is likely to be done to a person or in his presence, to his property, or a person is in fear of being harmed through an assault, an affray, a riot, unlawful assembly, or other disturbance. Howell, 1982, QB 416. As we can see, it's a fairly broad definition. The courts have confirmed that it covers situations where, for example, there are reasonable grounds to fear that a demonstrator or a protest is likely to incite violence, even violence against themselves. This appears to be applicable to the present case. Robinson provocatively filming defendants and streaming on Facebook for the edification of his cult is the kind of thing which could, it might be argued, lead to such a breach of the peace. Now, are people allowed to lawfully assemble? I'm not sure if that's the case in England. If that's the case, well, that's on them. And they need to figure that shit out. I'm sorry. That's different than going in and filming the proceedings. Once a person has been arrested for breaching the peace, the police have the power to detain that person where there is real apprehension that if released, they will renew the breach of the peace within a short time and where the police believe that further detention is necessary to prevent this. Now, you may not like that law. You may say, well, they can say anybody's about to breach the peace, which, by the way, I would agree with. But if you don't like the law, change the law. Like, that should be the actual discussion here. Given Robinson's history of interfering with criminal trials and his defiance toward court orders, one can see why the police may have genuinely feared that he would have simply returned to the court if not detained. So if Tommy Robinson doesn't have the history of pulling stunts, they would have let him go, more than likely. But he did. So they kept him. The power of detention is time limited. The detainee must be released within 24 hours, if not charged or for serious indictable offenses. Detention may be authorized up to 96 hours. Number 4, how can it be legal for somebody to be arrested for breach of the peace and then imprisoned for contempt? It is perfectly common for a person to be arrested on suspicion of one offense, then ultimately charged or dealt with for another. In this case, it appears that Yaxley Lennon was arrested and detained for causing a threatening breach of the peace, and that the court, upon being made aware of his activities, directed that he be brought to court to be dealt with for contempt of court. even if his original arrest and detention had been unlawful, and there is nothing at all to suggest that it was. This would have absolutely no bearing on the contempt proceedings. The breach of the peace angle is a red herring. So back up a step. What exactly is contempt of court? Contempt of court is a broad catch-all term for various offenses against the administration of justice. The laws of contempt are designed to safeguard the fairness of legal proceedings and to maintain the authority and dignity of the court. Some contempts are set out in statute, including the aptly named Contempt of Court Act 1981. This sets out what is referred to as strict liability contempt. The rule is that it is contempt to publish any matter which creates a substantial risk of serious prejudice or impediment to the course of justice in legal proceedings, irrespective of the intention behind the publication. There is a defense available to publishers, which includes newspapers, TV, and social media users, who could show they were providing a fair and accurate report of legal proceedings held in public contemporaneously and in good faith, thus giving some latitude to the press and ensuring that the media do not shy away from accurate factual reporting of criminal proceedings. So there is some leeway there if it can be demonstrated. Was it demonstrated? Obviously not. Tommy Robinson pled guilty. He didn't plead innocent. He didn't go into this piece of this legislation or this law which said, I'm going to prove that what I was doing was a fair and accurate report of the legal proceedings held in public. He had that option. He chose not to do that. He pleaded guilty. And then he offered up his regrets. And that's going to connect to Roseanne Barr, which I'm going to talk about. Other contempts are more eclectic, such as the prohibition on taking photographs or moving images inside a court, building or even drawing a picture. Court sketch artists have to draw outside the court from memory. That is Section 41 of the Criminal Justice Act, 1925. That's a law. Look, you may not like that law. If you're somebody who lives in Great Britain, you may not like it. Well, do something about the law. Now you know about it. Get off your hands. If you don't like the law, do something about it. But when you do that, you're going to put a trial potentially at risk. We're going to get into this. There is also a common law offense of criminal contempt, which is defined by the courts as conduct that denotes willful defiance of or disrespect towards the court, or what willfully challenges or affronts the authority of the court or the supremacy of the law itself. This might include refusing to answer questions in court, physically disrupting court proceedings, interfering with witnesses or jurors were not charged as a distinct offense of witness intimidation, or preventing the course of justice, or defying a judge's order. Which brings us back to Mr. Yaxley Lennon and a sunny day in May last year at Canterbury Crown Court. What happened at Canterbury Crown Court? On 8 May 2017, during the course of a rape trial at Canterbury Crown Court involving 4 Asian defendants, meaning Muslim, Yaxley Lennon attended court and attempted to film the defendants for an online broadcast entitled Tommy Robinson in Canterbury Exposing Muslim Child Rapists. He was thwarted by the judge, making arrangements for the defendants and jurors to leave court through alternative routes, and so settled for filming himself on camera, both on the court steps and inside the court building, preaching to his online followers about Muslim pedophiles. He was interrupted and told by court that recording was prohibited, Section 41, Criminal Justice Act, 1925, as we discussed above, but continued to record, insisting he had been told by a different court that he was entitled to film the defendants, notwithstanding that court buildings are plastered with signs reminding people not to do this. His video diatribe, in which he said that the pedophiles are hiding, that the police had asked him not to expose them as pedophiles, presumably on the basis that they were at the time defendants in a live trial, but we will, and that would be going round to their houses to catch the defendants on camera, thus continued. The judge hearing the rape trial was made aware And he was brought before court to be dealt with for contempt of court. So he went in and basically started filming this trial. Like it wasn't good enough for these guys to get tried. He believes there's a conspiracy. And the conspiracy is where the police are allowing the Muslims to go in and do gang raping. Okay? Now, that may be the case. I don't know. I don't live there. I don't follow this. But what he did is he put that case at risk. Whether you like that law or not, he put the case at risk and he broke the law. Again, if Tommy Robinson, Stephen Yaxley Lennon is a natural law whiz and can throw shit down and circumnavigate all the Crown Court rules like Hermes fucking Trismegistus, then have at it. Go for it. Put them back on their heels. But he's not. He's not. He's a low-level operative. And if he was a higher-level operative, if he knew what he was doing, yeah, he might be able to do it. And I'm going to get into his treating the symptom and not the cause. It's coming. The judge, H.H.J. Norton, dealt with Yaxley Lennon on 22 May 2017. She found he was in contempt by having filmed inside the court building contrary to Section 41, but was also in common law contempt by having continued to film, having been told to stop by the court staff. So they said, Tommy, stop it. And he said, fuck you. And there are people, oh good, great, good. Well, what's going to happen? Well, you're going to get arrested, right? That's their house. And unless you know the rules, how to circumnavigate their house and essentially zap them, that's what's going to happen. But he didn't, okay? All right, let me keep going here. The judge considered the content of his broadcast and the real risk of his actions, derailing the trial, and committed him to prison for 3 months, suspended for a period of 18 months. In practical terms, a suspended sentence means that the prison sentence, 3 months, hangs over you for the operational period, 18 months. If you remain offense-free and comply with any requirements the court makes, you will never have to serve your sentence. If you reoffend, the presumption in law is that you will serve that prison sentence additional to whatever sentence you receive for the new offense. Tommy Robinson knew this. So what you're saying is that Tommy Robinson was given a suspended sentence simply for trying to report on a case. Free speech is truly dead. Know ye of little brain, he was found to be in contempt of court and given a suspended sentence because his actions put a serious criminal trial in jeopardy, running around a court building shouting pedophile at defendants during a live trial or live streaming defendants and members of the public, potentially including jurors, entering and exiting a court building against a tub-thumping narration of Muslim pedophile gangs is hardly conducive to ensuring a fair trial. And if there can't be a fair trial, nobody gets justice. Not the accused, not the complainants, not the public. This is not theoretical. Serious criminal trials have nearly collapsed because of the actions of people like Yaxley Lennon. We have a quaint tradition in England and Wales that trial by media should be avoided, and that trial and evidence heard in court is the fairest way to determine a person's guilt. Therefore, while criminal courts are open to the public, and it is absolutely fine to report soberly and accurately on ongoing criminal trials, anything which might prejudice or intimidate the jury is strictly forbidden. And this makes sense. It would be a nonsense, for example, to have strict laws preventing individuals from walking up to a juror to say, the defendant you are trying is plainly a dirty pedophile. But to allow broadcasters or tabloid columnists to trumpet that message to jurors through the media, self-defined free speech advocates, particularly a number on the other side of the Atlantic, have difficulty understanding this. So it's worth pasting in full what H.H.J. Norton said. The contempt hearing is not about free speech. This is not about freedom of the press. This is not about legitimate journalism. This is not about political correctness. This is not about whether one political viewpoint is right or another. It is about justice. And it is about ensuring that a trial can be carried out justly and fairly. It is about ensuring that a jury are not in any way inhibited from carrying out their important function. It is about being innocent until proven guilty. It is not about people prejudging a situation and going round to that court and publishing material, whether in print or online, referring to defendants as Muslim pedophile rapists. A legitimate journalist would not be able to do that, and under the strict liability rule, there would be no defense to publication in those terms. It is pejorative language which prejudges the case, and it is language and reporting. If reporting indeed is what it is, that could have had the effect of substantially derailing the trial. As I've already indicated, because of what I knew was going on, I had to take avoiding action to make sure that the integrity of this trial was preserved, that justice was preserved, and that the trial could continue to completion without people being intimidated into reaching conclusions about it or into being affected by irresponsible and inaccurate reporting. It's something of the nature which you put on social media had been put into the mainstream press. I would have been faced with applications from the defense advocates concerned. I have no doubt to either say something specific to the jury or worse, to abandon the trial and start again. That is the kind of thing that actions such as these can and do have, and that is why you have been dealt with in the way in which you have, and why I am dealing with this case with the seriousness which I am. So she's basically saying she has got a trial to preside over. And what he is doing can interfere with the trial. And all you people out there who want to see these animals brought to justice, well, he jeopardizes that. He jeopardizes that and could still continue to jeopardize that. You know, what happens if they're convicted? Okay? What happens if they're convicted? And then they come back and they use the law and they use what Tommy Robinson did to get the case and the trial and the sentencing thrown out. And then have another trial where everything now is contaminated and toxic, and there's no way any jury without prejudice, pro or con, can actually participate in a fair trial. No justice is served. Those girls will not see justice. And the gangs which have been groomed will continue to hit the streets and continue to do what they do. Now you tell me, the people who came after me yesterday and told me I was a cunt or a bitch to die, how that's going to help these girls. Oh, you could take it to another level. Fuck you, cuck, whatever. I don't care. But maybe if you opened your brain up a little bit, you'd understand that it's actually like there's a process here. And your boy shit and contaminated into the process and put the girls at risk. But that's okay. We're in a lynch mob mentality now. That's both on the left and both on the right. And there is blood in the air. People want blood. They want to see people hang. Both sides. Careful what you wish for. How is all that relevant to what took place on 25 May 2018? It is relevant because when passing the suspended sentence, H.H.J. Norton gave some fairly clear warnings to Yaxley Lennon. Here we go. You should be under no illusions that if you commit any further offense of any kind, that would include, I would have thought, a further contempt of court by similar actions, then that sentence of 3 months would be activated. And that would be on top of anything else that you were given by any other court. In short, Mr. Yaxley Lennon, turn up at another court, refer to people as Muslim pedophiles, Muslim rapists, and so, and so forth while trials are ongoing and before there's been a finding by a jury that is what they are, and you will find yourself inside. Do you understand? And what did Yaxley Lennon go and do? As we know now, he went and committed a contempt of court. By reporting on court proceedings, he did so in a way that expressed his views on the guilt or otherwise of the defendants, creating substantial risk of serious prejudice to the proceedings by jurors seeing or becoming aware of his ill-informed ramblings. If this wasn't enough, he was also in breach of reporting restrictions which he had accepted that he knew about. He was therefore, it seems, in contempt twice over. This could have led to an application by the defense advocates to discharge the jury and start afresh, potentially meaning vulnerable complainants having to go through the trauma of a trial over again, or even an application to stay, that means to bring an end, the proceedings altogether. You've got girls that have been traumatized. They're going through a fucking trial. Okay? And he basically got to a point where they could have called the whole trial and would start over again, in which case they got to relive the whole thing all over again. It boggles the mind. Like, if the trial goes south, like, Tommy, get on your high horse and burn the thing down. Okay? That's your right. But clearly in this situation, it is not your right. And he didn't know enough about natural law or real common law to circumnavigate that and throw shit out there, which you can do to basically stun the whole thing. He doesn't know about that. He doesn't know enough about that. So he's not going to do it. So in that case, you're playing by their rules, in which case you lose. Here we go. Importantly, Yaxley Lennon admitted that he was in contempt of court. He admitted it. And he was committed to prison for 10 months. Not only did he admit it, he actually said he regretted it. So all you people that think he's a fucking hero, right? You know what a hero, like if he was really like up to snuff, and I'm going to get into this with Roseanne too. If he was really up to snuff, he would have said, fuck you, judge, fuck you, court. I would do this every single day, 365, because this is what I believe in. Yeah, you got to respect those kinds of convictions. Even if the judge doubles down and says, you're in there for 22 months. Like, even I would kind of applaud that, right? It's like, this motherfucker's crazy. He means this shit. But you know what he did? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I regret what I did. You know what that is? That's the sign of a coward. That's a coward. Total coward. I'm sorry. Then he gets into jail. Now he's a cause celeb. Oh, he's a victim. He's a victim. I'll get into that too. He was committed to prison for 10 months with a suspended sentence of 3 months, activated and directed to run consecutively exactly as he'd been warned. The big court system told Widow Tommy that if he was going to be a bad boy again, he'd have to go sit into the corner. And Widow Tommy was a bad boy again. And that's exactly what happened. He was tried in secret on the day he was arrested with no lawyers, and the media were banned from reporting what happened. This is Kafka on steroids, surely. Here's the answer. Contempt proceedings do not attract a jury trial. Hello? There you go. There is no fucking jury trial for a contempt proceeding. You got a problem with that? Go change the law. Deal with the law. The procedure for a court dealing with a contempt criminal is to set out in the criminal procedure rules. These allow for a summary procedure where the court, having made its own inquiries and offered a contemnor for that is the official term, the chance to seek legal advice can deal with the offender straight away. The Crown Court can commit a contemnor to prison for up to 2 years. There is nothing unusual in him being dealt with on the day of the contempt. Courts are required to deal with contempts as swiftly as possible. There is no suggestion of any prejudice. Yaxley Lennon was legally represented by an experienced barrister and would have received full legal advice. It's true. There's no exception. If his name was Hamid Abibi, it might have been the same thing. Same deal. You're in contempt. Boom, you're in prison. You think there are Muslims in prison you don't think there are Muslims in prison in England? Of course there are. And I'll bet you some of them actually were part of a contempt proceeding. He's not special. He is not a political prisoner. He also wasn't tried in secret. His contempt hearing was heard in public with members of the press present. However, the judge imposed temporary reporting restrictions under Section 4.2 of the Contempt of Court Act, 1981, again, postponing, reporting of the details of Lennon's contempt until the trial and the subsequent related trial had concluded. This, you may think, is for obvious reasons. A media circus, an orchestrated attempt at martyrdom by Lennon and this is now the editorializing of the site, not mine, his deranged followers. As was indeed attempted when the restrictions were defied by far-right blogs in foreign news outlets, would present exactly the sort of distraction that threatened to disrupt the very serious criminal proceedings that the judge was desperately seeking to keep on the rails. So let's say they have a big open trial and Tommy Robinson, cause celeb, all about his rights for free speech and open representation. Now we've got a global trial, in the press, and Alex Jones flying over there on a jet with his bullhorn, rah, 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 right? Well, that's going to put the other case in jeopardy. In which case, these girls who were raped, traumatized, would either not have any justice, might have to go through the trial again, and be re-traumatized all over again. You see, these things are actually more complicated than people understand. They're trying to get a fair trial so that these guys who did what they did actually wind up in jail. And this guy was interfering with it. You may not like what I'm saying, but those are the facts. In the event, the repeated breaches of the order by foreign news outlets and social media users meant the judge's intentions were thwarted. An application to discharge reporting restriction was made on 29 May 2018, it was yesterday, and the judge agreed that in light of what happened over the bank holiday weekend, restrictions should be lifted to allow publication of the facts. It is also worth noting that there is a practice direction dealing with situations where defendants are imprisoned for contempt of court. This requires that full judgments be published online and handed to the media where a person is committed to prison for contempt, as we can expect imminently. As for the suggestion by UKIP, among others, that nobody has ever been found in contempt of court and a postponement order made preventing the media from immediately reporting it, a handy example can be found on 22 May 2017, where one Stephen Yaxley Lennon was found to be in contempt at Canterbury, and a postponement order was made restricting publication until the end of the substantive trial. So the case history for this to happen was Tommy Robinson. Update. Here we go. We got some more for you here. Update. In light of the frankly ingenious conspiracy theorists that are now doing the rounds after the rather mundane truth above was revealed, some bonus Q&As are required. I heard that Tommy Robinson was denied his own lawyer and had to have a duty lawyer who was in fact a prosecution lawyer who didn't properly defend him. This is quite something. But sadly, Yaxley Lennon was defended by an experienced member of the independent criminal bar. He may have been offered the duty solicitor at the police station if his chosen solicitor was not available. But in the Crown Court hearing, he was advised and represented by a specialist criminal barrister with over 16 years of experience of cases including murder, people trafficking, serious violence, and serious sexual offenses. As an independent barrister, this professional prosecutes as well as defends. Most of us do. But his website profile, in fact, emphasizes his experience as a defense advocate. In other words, Yaxley Lennon had a top-notch defense barrister fighting in his corner. Number 12, no trial has ever taken place on the same day as a suspect's arrest. Oh, fake lawyer. This was special treatment dished out to a man who is a thorn in the side of the establishment. What do you say about that? If we were talking about jury trials, I'd agree with you. But Yaxley Lennon was not tried. The contempt proceedings were held on the same day as is entirely standard. See the details of the summary procedure for contempt above. And he admitted that he was in contempt of court. There's no special treatment here whatsoever. Anyone infamous, far-right totem or otherwise, and he's not a far-right totem, by the way, I'll get into that, would have been subject to the exact same process for contempt in breaching a reported restriction. Not everyone have been sent straight to prison, but then not everyone has a suspended sentence hanging over them for a near identical offense. 13. I've seen a photo of the judge who sentenced Tommy watching his arrest from inside the court building. This judge was biased. Even supposing the photograph shows what is said to show, this is entirely irrelevant. If as happened in one of my cases, a member of the public starts shouting out at a judge mid-proceedings, the judge may direct the arrest of that person and deal with them immediately for the contempt. Witnessing the arrest of an individual does not preclude a judge from dealing with that individual in these circumstances. This is, again, a complaint devoid of an argument. But the BBC reported on the same trial that Tommy did, and they're not in prison. Why not? Because any BBC reports, which as far as I have seen, relate entirely to the outset of the proceedings before the judge made the reporting restriction and were not in contempt of court. They were fair and accurate rather than propagandist rants seeking to disseminate information that a judge had specifically ordered should not be in the public domain. Okay. Do you have to be so snarky in your law-splaining? Aren't you turning people off who you need to convince? There are two types of people currently propagating the free Tommy Robinson myths. The far-right sympathizers deliberately sowing discord and falsehoods, whose concern for due process is a cipher for hero worship of a racist cult leader, and good people confused and worried about what they've heard about the threat to free speech posed by the overbearing English and Welsh justice system. The first category are never going to be swayed by facts or rational argument. That is plain from every interaction on social media and their every appearance on Fox News. Whatever. There are some good people on Fox News. Tucker Carlson is A-OK in my book. Everybody else, just like any other news organization, is under my level of scrutiny. They are beyond reach and frankly not worth the effort. The second group will, I hope, realize from this explanation that the toga party they have wandered into is in fact a Klan meeting and will understand the urgency and frustration that underpins the argument. I would say it's a Klan meeting. Okay, I wouldn't go that far, but we're going to get into it. However, the reality is that most people out in the world are probably paying little attention to the Ballad of St. Tommy, but may form partial views based on what snippets they'd read and hear. I want this, the truth, to be that snippet. If the key to turning up the online volume is a snappy tone and uncompromising beatdown of idiots and liars, then that's the game I'll play. Okay, all right, so here we go. This is a guy, whether you like it or not, who has the legal stuff down. He doesn't like Tommy Robinson. He doesn't like his shtick. He may be a liberal. He may be, I don't know. I don't know who this person is. But they clearly have a handle of the facts. And they clearly have a handle on the fact that Tommy Robinson violated a bunch of shit. And he's in jail for it. And to make him a cause celeb is to completely overlook the fact that he did what he did. Okay, now I'm going to play my own kind of off the res thing here. People are saying, well, he's the only person that's exposing this. So we're going to overlook this. There's a lot about Tommy Robinson, by the way, that you might have to overlook. Like I spent like the last 24 hours going into Tommy Robinson. I know a fair amount about Tommy Robinson. Maybe not much as a lot of people do, but anecdotally, there are people who have shared information that he was kind of a low-level drug dealer. Now, I'm not going to bring that up because I'm going to slam his character. Okay, it's something I found out on the internet. We found out a lot of things on the internet. So, but that's out there. And there's a lot more out there about Tommy Robinson. The part I'm going to speak to you about Tommy Robinson is the fact that I think that Tommy Robinson is treating the symptom and not the cause. And what do I mean by that? Well, it's kind of like what Roseanne did yesterday. And I'm going to get to Roseanne. And I'm going to get to kind of the fallout from that. Tommy Robinson is basically saying that the Quran is a book of hate, that Islam is a system that does not integrate, that they're separatist, they're not nationalist. And I believe that Tommy Robinson is actually talking about an extreme version of Islam. There are extreme versions of just about anything, okay? There are extreme versions of Judaism. Yeah, guess what? It's called Zionism. Yeah, there's a thing called Chabad Lubavitch. Yeah, there's a thing called Wahhabists and Salafists. Yeah, there are things like Christian Zionists, right? The dispensationalists. They're extreme versions of these faiths. And they're all dangerous, if you ask me. They're all dangerous because they're extreme. Okay, and they all kind of have this kind of end time scenario. They all want to, kind of rule on earth. Like if you look at the Christian Zionists, right, they keep Israel around only because Israel is part of their end game scenario. It's got to be like, one whole state. It can't be two separate states because that's how their end time gets to play out. And then once that happens, Jesus comes back as Rambo, snuffs them out, snuffs the Muslims out. They get to go up into heaven for a while, get their lawn chairs, have some Diet Coke, some popcorn, watch the whole thing come down, come down from that place, right? That kind of the Rapture Motel 6 in the sky. And then they get to reclaim the earth and everybody else is wiped out and it's their planet. Right? Well, guess what? The Muslims have their own extreme version of it. And by the way, so does Chabad Lubavitch. Same deal. It's like everybody else gets wiped out, but they're the chosen ones. Everybody has their little chosen spectrum. I'll tell you a little bit more about Mr. Little Tommy Robinson here. So this is from an article on RT. And this was published on the 29th of March. And I'm going to read you a little part of it. In fact, let me read you the whole thing. Tommy Robinson's message is simple. He has no intention of stopping. He has the God-given right to freedom of speech, and he intends to use it. We're going to explore that in a second. He intends to use it against Islam. He intends to use it against political correctness. I'm all right with that. But these are the same kinds of canards that are being used in the United States by the so-called alt-right, by people like Laura Loomer and Mike Cernovich, Jack Posobiec. And they're not really into that free speech, trust me. They're into free speech which suits them and their agenda. I mean, just like the left is. We're going to get into that too. Robinson wants to stop the building of mosques to prompt the ban of Sharia courts. His views are to many abhorrent, it's horrible, and provocative. He has been branded a racist and bigoted. Entire groups from all over Britain attend his rallies to try and shut him down because of his anti-Islam stance. The former English Defense League EDL leader refuses to accept any accusations he is spreading hate, because in his words, it is his right to say what he wants about any religion he chooses, but he only chooses to say it about Islam. In the UK, free speech is not set out in law, but it is assumed through the Nations Association with the European Convention on Human Rights. See, that was a bad deal. That was a bad deal, England. You shouldn't have signed up for that. In various case law, there are laws on hate speech. Hello, I'm not supporting those laws, but they're in place. You let your leaders jump feet first into that. And really what you should be doing, Mr. Tommy Robinson and everybody else over there in England, you should be putting their feet to the fire to do your Brexit trip and get the fuck out of the EU. Like, that's where you should be putting your energy. Because guess what? Then you can decouple from bullshit like this and the European Convention on Human Rights and various case law. You can have your country back. But what is he doing? He's going after the symptom and not the cause. But in a fractured society where hate crime is increasing, because we have polarization, where hate comes from both sides, which have been allowed to spout vile rhetoric on loop, is it time to crack open the discussion on free speech. In an exclusive interview with RT UK, Robinson denied the accusation of hate speech and revealed his plans to take matters into his own hands. We live in a post-free speech era, Robinson told RT. Since talking about Islam, I face government persecution, police persecution, violent opposition, and that's all for expressing my free speech and criticism of an ideology. We have views that hate speech and those laws are not implemented across everyone equally. Tommy Robinson is a lucky little son of a bitch. Okay? Let me tell you in a second. I'll tell you why. Just remember that. The word hate speech has taken over for racism. This is his quotes. The word racism was used to silence the public discourse, and they could control the discourse. The media never pick up on this. In my first speech after Lee Rigby, I said, if you spit on a Muslim woman, you're a moron. If you set fire to a mosque, you're a coward. I've said these things continuously for the last 9 years. I've always made a difference between extremist Muslims and ordinary Muslims. Really? Really? Okay. I keep telling them they're going to create monsters. When you stifle free speech, you drive it underground. Right now, I'd say the people of Britain are furious, and they're angry, and they're scared. They probably are. The problem is those who seek to shut him up have done the exact opposite. His message is being heard. According to his own statistics, Tommy's message is received loud and clear by millions of people every month on some platforms, reaching 200 million people in a 3-week period, according to Robinson. For those who don't support him, that's terrifying. Mainstream media, except the BBC, has cut him off. Police have arrested him. His extreme left groups attack him. The result? His popularity is apparently skyrocketing. A ban on Twitter for the controversial character has served as nothing but a PR exercise for him. This week, hundreds of fans took to social media to support him, while some who do not beg Twitter bosses and politicians to stop making him a symbol of free speech movement, gripping public discourse. Tommy says his experience of how not being heard and being ignored sparks the entire movement. When I first started in 2009, the only option we had was to get out on the streets. Before we went out on the streets, we tried everything. Contacted our council, made petitions. It didn't matter because there weren't enough of us. We went out on the streets that gave birth to the English Defense League. That's where I had to be to get the platform to talk to people. Then I see the future is this. The future is your phone. Talk to people. In the last 7 days, 7 million people have watched my videos on Facebook. All the years of slander and attack on us. They see people are listening to us. We're waking them up. We need political change. I don't disagree with that. But what kind of political change? What are we talking about here? Are you talking about dealing with immigration laws and curtailing the immigration laws? Is that the political change he's talking about? Well, last time I checked, Britain's still part of the EU. They haven't fully decoupled from Brexit. Right? That's the political change you need, England. Get your ass out of the EU. Change the laws. They can't right now. Can't do it. I'd say I'm probably the most listened to journalist in the UK. And that's not me being big-headed. When I looked at my figures for a 4-week period, 193 people read my tweets and 49 million people watch my videos on Facebook. 6 million have watched in the last 3 weeks on YouTube. Okay? Great. The same numbers, can be accounted for Beyonce. Does that make her right? Look at the Kardashians' numbers. Does that make them right? Does that give them the clout just because a lot of people watch their videos? Watch their Facebook feeds? Tommy says he differentiates between radical Islamists and peaceful Muslims. But in the next breath, he tells me he opposes Islam. Exactly. I mean, is that not a mindfuck? Well, there's a difference between radical Islamists and peaceful Muslims. Then he says I oppose Islam. To me, that is so cognitively dissonant, it's not even funny. He wants his right to practice free speech respected, but says Muslims should be set free from the religion they choose to practice. My problem, aside from the Muhammad-Hitler comparisons, is the blanket opposition to a religion, rather than the isolation of practices which are unacceptable. The oppression of women through Sharia law courts in Britain must be addressed immediately. Yet, so should abortion in Ireland, where teenage girls are refused the right to a termination after rape. Well, Ireland just got rid of that, so you don't have to worry about that now. Do we blame Catholicism or do we debate abortion? In all other areas, for all the religions, we seem to be able to separate the issues. I fail to fathom why he doesn't think that is hate speech, to call Islam evil, to blame religion for most wrongs in society. A child growing up hearing that another religion is wrong, hearing another religion follows a hateful doctrine, hearing they support a religion which preaches unspeakable acts, we're likely to grow to hate that religion. That in turn leads to justification for hating a person. Do you know what moils do? You know what a moil is? A moil is somebody who performs a circumcision. Do you know what they do? And I'm saying they all do. You know what a lot of them do after circumcision? They put their mouth on the baby's penis and suck the blood. That's what they do. Isn't that kind of reprehensible? Anybody ever talk about that? Right? I mean, there are a lot of things. There are a lot of things that religious sects do that are deplorable. Absolutely deplorable. Okay. So, a lot of people think that Tommy Robinson is the alt-right. Let me just share with you that Tommy Robinson is not really the quote-unquote alt-right. The alt-right is a completely different brand altogether. Okay? Completely different brand altogether. And I am going to read you something from an alt-right page. And this may offend some of you, but again, we are in the land of freedom of speech. And I'm reading this to show you the difference between Tommy Robinson, who is alt-right, and people who are really on the alt-right. Now, to give you the context here, these people are identitarians. They are white European identitarians. And they don't want anybody from any country to come into Europe and take away the culture or the identity. And these guys are hardcore, and I'm going to share with you what their point of view is. Now, you may not agree with it, or you may agree with it, but I'm sharing it with you to give you a contrast of how Tommy Robinson and Brittany Pettibone and Lauren Southern are compared to a much more hardcore version, which would never get the light of day. If Tommy Robinson, I'm going to apply this now. If Tommy Robinson took the stance of this group, Tommy Robinson's activism would have lasted all of 1 month. I'm going to read you the headline. And you may not stomach it well. The language may really get into your sensibility. But I'm reading this for a purpose. Are you ready? Here we go. This is by Brandon Martinez, March 26, 2018. Pro-Jew alt-lighters continue to misdirect the discourse. This is from the website Reconquista Europa, Reclaiming Our Heritage. And there's a picture of Lauren Southern with "fuck Islam" on her face and put on her Twitter page. Let me read this to you. As alt-lighters Lauren Southern and Brittany Pettibone have drummed up some media attention for themselves by getting banned from entering the UK on speech grounds, supposedly Southern was distributing placards that say Allah is gay. The ever-increasing politically correct tyranny governing Britain now deems criticism of Islam a speech crime. It shows with the rise in Muslim demographics in the UK, critical speech surrounding Islam will start to be suppressed with increased frequency. Islam allows no criticism of its God or prophet and punishes such speech by penalty of death or imprisonment. If Muslims ever gain a majority in the UK, you can be sure that they will start enforcing their backward speech codes on native Brits. They've already got the UK government doing it for them. So if you're a Tommy Robinson fan, you're saying, great, we get this, right? Here we go. This is where this thing takes a hard right turn. But what also needs to be said here is that Southern, Pettibone, and other alt-lighters are misdirecting the discourse away from, in quotes, the Jewish problem. Would Southern ever make comments critical of Judaism as she does for Islam? Has she ever even once criticized Israel or the Jews? Has she called out the leading Jewish role in political correctness, hate speech laws, multiculturalism, and mass immigration, in wars in the Middle East? Not once in her entire alt-media career. Instead, she's worked for Jewish media boss Ezra Levant and pushed his fake conservative pro-Israel propaganda. Southern and Pettibone are receiving support in the UK from Tommy Robinson, a well-known opportunist shill who is literally in the pay of Jews. His original organization, English Defense League, solely opposed Islam on liberal grounds. There were a bunch of libtards who eschewed racial nationalism and allowed non-whites into their group. Remember, these guys are hardcore, okay? Now, I'm just reading this to you because this is another version of what's happening beneath Tommy Robinson. Keep that in mind. There were a bunch of libtards who eschewed racial nationalism and allowed non-whites into their group. They ran around with Israeli flags in the streets. Robinson's critique of Islam, that gays, women, and religious minorities are persecuted under Islam, is entirely liberal. We oppose Islam and its presence in Europe because it is an expansionist and globalist anti-racist faith. Muslims want to impose their medieval sand religion over the heads of Europeans. Now, some of you may actually support that. Go, yay, good, you're right. Tommy Robinson supporters go, yay, they're right. Well, we don't want their culture, religion in Europe, but we make it clear that our opposition to Islam is not on liberal grounds. Islam's position on women and gays is more in line with our vision. How about that? This is funny now, right? These guys are anti-gay and they're anti-feminist, and so now they're in alignment with Islam. But the religion's violent and terroristic tendencies are what make it a danger to us. Muslims are liable to blow themselves up in our midst at any time. We've seen this routinely over the past years. Muslims can't be loyal or good citizens of any country that isn't governed by Islam because their loyalty is ultimately to their faith and not to nation states. Probably true, right? It is a religion. But we're getting into some interesting territory here, right? Who is beholden to whom? In what country is beholden to whom? Question mark. The alt-right led by attention whores and opportunists like Southern and Robinson want to misdirect the discussion. And again, I'm reading from the website, from the greater Jewish problem afflicting us. Southern, Pettibone, and Robinson only criticize Islam and Muslim immigrants and only on liberal grounds. That Islam is not compatible with liberal democracy and is a threat to the liberated lifestyles of homosexuals, trannies, and women. We don't care about any of that. I'm reading this to you, right, because I want to give you another example of the layer beneath Tommy Robinson. And if you're really pro Tommy Robinson and pro free speech and all that stuff, where do you chime in on this? Look, I'm going to be clear here, okay? If Tommy Robinson had started to talk about the problem with immigration and who's responsible for immigration and who's behind the plans of immigration, how much support do you think Tommy Robinson would have gotten? Tommy Robinson would be in jail. He'd be in jail. Tommy Robinson would not be allowed to speak. If Tommy Robinson came out and openly criticized Israel, Zionism, neoconservatism, Jews in general at large, where do you think Tommy Robinson would be? We wouldn't be having this discussion. We wouldn't know about Tommy Robinson, okay? But he's allowed to proliferate and create a divisive element in a larger and bigger discussion. Have any of you ever heard of the Kalergi plan by any chance? I'm sorry, it is the Kalergi plan. The Kalergi plan. Does Tommy Robinson ever talk about the Kalergi plan? Richard Coudenhove Kalergi. He was the son of an Austrian diplomat named Heinrich von Coudenhove-Kalergi and a Japanese woman named Mitsu Aoyama. His movement was financially backed by the Rothschilds, Bernard Baruch and Paul Warburg. His plan and the founding fathers of the Kalergi plan, the people behind it, their plan was to create a massive integration operation in Europe that was going to essentially genocide Western and Northern European culture. In 1922, Kalergi founded the Pan-European movement. That was in Austria. It was a federation of nations, which was led by the United States, by the way. And it was the first step in creating a world government. So Kalergi connected to world government, New World Order, the Pan-European movement. In his book, Praktischer Idealismus, Kalergi boldly declares that the citizens of the future United States of Europe will not be white people anymore. That's in his own words. The man of the future will be of mixed race. The races and classes of today will gradually disappear due to the elimination of space, time, and prejudice. This is his quotes from his book, The Eurasian Negroid Race of the Future. Similar appearance to the ancient Egyptians will replace the diversity of peoples with the diversity of individuals. Instead of destroying European Judaism, Europe will rise against her will, refine and educated this people, driving from their future status as a leading nation through this artificial evolutionary process. It's not surprising that the people that escaped from the ghetto prison became the spiritual nobility of Europe. This is the Kalergi plan, right? This is what's going on, ladies and gentlemen. This is the forced immigration. This was announced in 1922, and they've been following the plan. Does Tommy Robinson talk about this? No, he doesn't talk about this. Not at all. No, instead, he's like a low-level street preacher going after low-hanging fruit. You want to get into this, what's happening is that the plan is being socially engineered and people don't even understand what the fuck is going on. Don't. Period. End of story. And now they want to complain about it. Now they want to bitch and moan and complain about it. I am all for people living together peacefully. Bottom line, end of story. We're not allowed to do that. We're pitted against one another like pit bulls. You know, we're like pit bulls in urban, fight clubs, not even for humans, but dogs. We're pitted against one another. And the people that do this are laughing. They're cackling. They're laughing every step of the way, watching us at our own throats. And that goes for everybody. White, black, Jewish, Muslim, I don't care. It goes for everybody. And if we figured this out, if we all figured it out really quickly, guess what? We'd have an organizing principle. Because we're all being manipulated. All of us. Whether by fear or greed or separation, anxiety, guilt. It's all manipulation. It comes right down to it. But we go after the low-hanging fruit, the symptom, not the cause. If you really want to look at the cause, if you say, oh, Robert, what are you doing? You're blaming the Jews? No, I'm not blaming the Jews. That's not what I'm doing. No. You want to go back? You want to look at, the core of all this? Look at the black nobility. The black nobility, which arose basically during the 1400s and the 1500s and absconded with obscene amounts of wealth, influenced the papacy, and then infiltrated the houses of Europe. Those are the people that are running the fucking show. There's about 300 of them. And did they create the nation state of Israel? Of course they did. Of course they did. And for any number of reasons. Right? But to have a discussion, we've got to have a discussion about the black nobility, the Venetians. These are the people that basically control just about everything and have for a very, very long time. And they have partners in crime. And they have ideologies that they're able to tap into and turn one switch on and one switch off and ultimately pit people against one another. And they're connected into the Fabians and the eugenicists, and we're all part of one giant eugenicist program on the planet. And we're pawns in their game. And when we yell at each other and scream at each other, die bitch, fuck you traitor, backstab this, it doesn't advance the cause. To advance the cause, you have to go deeper and realize that there is something much bigger in play. And while it may feel good in the moment, that's all it is. It's just a momentary feel-good victory. I want to talk about Roseanne. So Roseanne got to some trouble yesterday. It was that Sagittarian moon, wasn't it? By the way, Tommy Robinson is a Sagittarius, Sun in Sag, Moon in Aries. Hey, does that surprise you? Mercury conjunct Sun in Sagittarius. And oh, how about Uranus conjunct the Sun in Sagittarius? Tommy Robinson is a Sun-Uranus conjunct person in Sagittarius with Mercury in Sag. And it's fall, by the way. Interesting, huh? Big Sag moon. People got shit off their chest, right? Holy smokes. Roseanne. Interesting. Has a new series. Starts, tweeting on the Trump side. Oh, I got to love me some Trump. The whole Trump thing, this, again, I talked about this yesterday. Sorry, you're getting like 90 minutes of me today. Because I'm going to be taking a break for the summer, and I'm going to get some stuff out there, and, I'll be back tomorrow, wrap it all up, because I'm sure we're going to have more hate, more fuck you, motherfucker, die bitch, right? Because you don't understand the nuance, what I'm trying to talk about. I'm sure I'll piss some people off. Oh, now you're an anti-Semite. No, I'm not an anti-Semite. I'm not. Absolutely not. I judge things accordingly by my own precepts and filters. Sorry, it's the way it goes. And most of that is if I deal with a person, I'll deal with a person. If I'm not dealing with a system, I'll look at that separately and try to work out the difference between the two. So Roseanne comes out. She's got her new show. She loves Trump. Trumpy, 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 Trumpy. So what's happening with Trump is now if you want to be a nationalist, apparently you got to be a Zionist. Because you can't criticize Israel. You criticize Israel now, oh boy. Fuck you. Liberal cunt. No. I can criticize anybody I want. I can criticize Obama, and I criticize Obama a lot. Did. Criticize him a lot. Criticize Clinton, criticize Hillary, criticize George Bush, right? Truth, right? Truth is a big deal. And it doesn't owe any allegiance to any party. Parties are gangs. This is what's happening. People are aligning with their gangs. Truth has its own morality. Think about that for a second. This goes back to Joe Strummer. And a quote from Strummer from the movie about him that was directed by, what's his name? Julian. If I forget his name now. Sorry, it'll come to me. Absolute Beginners, that Julian. The Future is Unwritten is the name of the movie. It's a documentary about Joe Strummer. Joe Strummer's father is a diplomat, moved all around the world. Hence Joe Strummer's love for world music from different cultures comes through in a lot of the music of the Clash and the 101ers and his post Clash band, the Mescaleros. When Joe Strummer talks about his going to public school, he realizes there are two groups. There are groups of people that get beat up on, and there are people that beat up on those people. And he chose one, and it became the group that people got beaten up on. This is what's happening now. We're being separated out into gangs. That's what's going on. You're either a Republican or a Democrat. You're either on the red side or the blue side. You're a Blood or you're a Crip. Pick your gang. And people will side with the alt-right or the now nationalist come Zionist version of it because guess what? They get to walk around and kick ass and say, fuck you, motherfucker, and not give a shit. Right? Look, if I want to get in on something, that may be the gang that I may want to join. Not saying I would, but I look at that and go, wow, shit, these guys don't take any shit. They got numbers and they got this really little powerful country behind them. Then there's the other gang, which is, Antifa and your left and all the other myriad groups that make up that gang. It's like, I really don't want to be a member of any of them, to be honest with you. Yeah, would I prefer nationalism? Of course I would. It's better than globalism. Bottom line in the story. But I don't like the brand of nationalism that's being dished out. And that's my right, and I get to reserve that right. But if you're pro-America, MAGA, and pro-Trump, well, now they've done an ingenious job of interlacing that with being pro-Zionism. It's brilliant. Brilliant. They're basically here's what's going on. They're turning the world, or they're turning democracy, belief in the country, into a Zionist-light ideology and essentially turning most of the world into Gaza. That's the plan. Okay? You heard it here. And I'm not some lefty libtard. I'm not some progressive pussy or cunt. Right? I abhor social Marxism. I abhor the social programming. I abhor what they've done to the schools and the universities. I abhor politically correct thinking. But I'm not going to be cornered into somebody else's version of what that should look like. We are in the time of a great awakening, but beware of a false awakening. Just remember that. Because if I was running this show and I knew that people were waking up, what would I do? I'd herd them off into another area where they thought that they had woken up. And guess what I'd do after that? I'd put the fucking hammer down. If that was my show, I'd give them the satisfaction to think that really they had gotten somewhere. But knowing all along that everything that was being done was leading them in that direction. But it'd be a false awakening. Because people weren't paying attention. And what they were doing was going after emotional gratification. The low-hanging fruit. Treating the symptom. Not the cause. The people who have been running this show have been around for a long time. Long time. And they have massive amounts of resources. And they generally work together. The Rothschilds worked together with the Crown of England. The Crown of England became filthy rich thanks to the Rothschilds. They worked together. Hello? The EU, the Rothschilds, they worked together. So if you think that it's just a Rothschild problem, if you think it's just a Vatican problem, you think it's just a Jesuit problem, think again. It's a network. And that's ultimately kind of what we're up against here on this planet. Okay? This is what we're dealing with. And it's fairly complex. And people want really kind of like, it's like we live in such a short attention span moment of time in history. Let's talk about Roseanne. So Roseanne comes out, she's got her show, and she basically says George Soros worked for the Nazis. Well, that's true. Okay, so this will give you kind of an example here, what I'm talking about in some ways. That is true. In Soros' own words, that is true. When he was a young kid, he was basically rounding up people for the Nazis, and they happened to be Jewish. And he was taking their property, their money, and he basically said, if somebody else didn't do it, if I didn't do it, somebody else would. Which is one of the greatest, most slippery slopes ever. But that was his reasoning. And he learned a lot. And what did he do? He absolutely and utterly murdered his morality. He has no morality. None. He was a man free of morality and conscience. And we have somebody that's free of morality and conscience. In some ways, they're free. But really what they've done is they've disconnected themselves from their heart and their ability to experience higher forms of consciousness. So they're not truly free. They're free to the extent that on this plane of existence, they can do whatever they want, theoretically. But there's a cap on that. And their freedom is just limited to this world and maybe about 4 levels below it. But they're not truly free. But they're kind of free in this world. Right? So he murdered. Cremation of care. That was his version of the cremation of care. He murdered his morality. And he moved forward as a result. He doesn't care. Profit off anybody. Anything. Doesn't matter. But then she goes on in a following tweet and says, well, you take a Muslim and a monkey and you put them together and you get Valerie Jarrett. Is that smart? Is that really smart? And is that advancing the cause at all? Now, the big argument there is, well, what does the left say about our president and what do they get away with? Yeah. I get it. I totally get it. There's a double standard. There is a double standard in place. But I'll tell you what, people have lost their jobs. They've lost their sponsorships. Kathy Griffin lost her little sponsorship with her little poopy seat. People lose their gigs. Jamel Hill Tommy Sotomayor, right? Really interesting guy. He's a brother. He calls it as he sees it. He did this hierarchy. Who gets away with saying what? The top of the hierarchy is the black woman. This is coming from a black man, not me. I'm telling you. She gets away with whatever. She gets away with talking the most shit. But even Jemele Hill, who called Trump a racist and all this other stuff, guess what? She's not at ESPN anymore. Why? Because she's bad for ratings. Even Jemele Hill, who in Tommy Sotomayor's hierarchy couldn't get away with what she was saying. Now, in Roseanne Barr's case, she's like, I think, third on that hierarchy. So the top of the hierarchy, according to Tommy Sotomayor, is a black female. She can get away with saying just about anything. After that, it'd be a black homosexual. This is what, again, Tommy Sotomayor. He's like next down. And then third is a white woman, right? So Roseanne Barr is like third down on the hierarchy. So when she came out with that yesterday, she had no fucking chance. None whatsoever. All right, she's done. She's done. She's done. ABC axed her show. Axed her show. By the way, ABC, president of ABC, happens to be a woman, happens to be black. Go figure. Took Roseanne out of circulation. Now again, Roseanne Barr can say whatever she wants. That's her right. But guess what? She lost her job. Oh, she can't say that? Sure, she can say it. And ABC has every freaking right to fire her ass. That's right. They do. She has a contract. ABC has sponsors. They'll lose sponsors. They'll lose money. I'm sorry. It's a capitalist game. I actually stand by ABC's right to fire her. Just like I stand by the NFL's right not to hire Colin Kaepernick. How can I hold both things? Oh, isn't that interesting? Well, what are you saying? Are you a racist? Are you a racist? Because that's a racist point of view. No, it's not a racist point of view. The NFL is a business. Their business is to put people in the seats. Their business is to get people to watch their games. And if Colin Kaepernick is going to be divisive and take his political views and put them front and center where a lot of people are not into it, and if I'm a team and my fan base isn't into it, I'm not hiring him. And that's my right as an employer. And I don't give a shit if it impinges upon poor widow Cohen's First Amendment rights. He went out there, he said it, he made his bed, he gets to live with the consequences. And I support it. I support his right to do it. Now look what happened. The league's not going to hire him. I don't blame these teams. It's a distraction. If you had a business, let's say for instance, okay? Let's say for instance you're working at Starbucks. You decide to put on an armband, a Nazi armband, right? Because that's your political belief. How long do you think fucking Starbucks is going to keep you there? You'll last like 2 minutes. They'll ask you to take it off. And if you don't take it off, guess what they're going to do? They're going to fire you on the spot. Okay? Like, this is how things work. You can do it, but you run the risk of, guess what? Losing your job. Well, then that gets into money. Things are tied to money. That's true. They are. And until further notice, they will be. So you take away the money, and guess what? Then people can do what they want freely because they're not at risk of having their shit taken away from them. An interesting thought, isn't it? So ABC shit-canned Roseanne. I don't have a problem with Rose. On the surface, she can say what she wants. But what does she do? She immediately erases the tweet, comes out and apologizes. Like, that's really brave. That's like being a culture warrior, not. Roseanne, if she'd taken responsibility for it, would have left the tweet up, maybe had Twitter made it take it down, maybe had ABC force Twitter to take it down. She would have said, I'm unapologetic, and these are my points of view, and if I lose my show, so be it. I said my piece. How would you feel about Roseanne then? I'd say that takes some balls, Roseanne. That takes some balls. And she could have said, please do not cancel my show. I'm quitting the show. How about that? I'm quitting the show. You know what that does? It indemnifies the people that are on the show. And guess what they get to do? They might be able to keep their jobs. And the crew might be able to keep their jobs. But what did she do? She blew the whole thing up. Now they're all done. And people say, oh, she was making such an inroad. She was the lone voice of conservatism on the internet, on ABC. And that's why it was done. It's a conspiracy. That's the same fucking stupid Tommy Robinson bullshit. Roseanne had a choice. She made a choice. She could have said, I'm quitting the show because I'm about to drop some bombs here and I want to protect the people on my show. There you go. Isn't that really kind of the more responsible thing to do? Right? Maybe she was triggered. She's talked about her MK Ultra past. There have been rumors for a long time Tom Arnold was her handler. But she blew it up. Then she doesn't even have the balls to come out and say, yeah, I stand by this. She grovels. Same thing with Tommy Robinson. Right? Tommy Robinson unapologetically should have pled not guilty. He should have said, I stand by what I do, blah, 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 blah. But he didn't. He offered up his regrets. Now he gets to be in prison and play the role of a victim. It was so funny. I was on InfoWars, and it was like, this is the end of free speech in Europe. Really? Free speech in Europe ended a long time ago. There are hate speech laws that are all over Europe. There's a grandmother on the run in England for violating hate speech laws. 89-year-old woman. I'm sorry, in Germany, on the run for violating hate speech laws. Sorry, Alex, you're a little late to the party. Again, disingenuous, not fully truthful, agitating the public in a way that is not informed, forcing you off into a pen. And even her tweet, right? Even her tweet, it's like base. What does she wind up looking like? She winds up looking like a racist. And there are people say, well, that's okay. It's good. She got her point across. No, she didn't. No, now she's just another white racist, right? That's how she's being labeled now. And you could argue till the cows come home that it's a conspiracy or freedom of speech is being, abrogated. No, she made a stupid comment. Anytime you call somebody who's black and Valerie Jarrett is mixed a monkey, you may as well call them the worst word imaginable according to that group of people, right? You're done. You're done. And it's not anything new. Howard Cosell called a wide receiver from the Washington Redskins on a play where he got open in the field and started running wildly down the field with to score. I think it might have been Gary Clark, if I'm not mistaken. And he said, look at that little monkey run. He was done. Howard Cosell never called another game in his life. Never. But that was years ago. That was in the 1980s, folks. So this is nothing new. You cross that line, you're going to pay a price. She should have known that. What might have been more interesting is if Roseanne actually said Valerie Jarrett is in part responsible for the death of 40,000 people. That might have been a more interesting tweet. Would that have gotten her fired? I don't think so. Maybe. But now Valerie Jarrett would have had to respond to that. And people will say, well, what do you mean, Roseanne? Well, she could have said, well, there were drone strikes that were happening, what was it, every Thursday? And she could have gone into great detail and talked about it. And she, just because she was advising Obama, might have even been Obama's handler, by the way. She was just letting it happen. She was co-signing on the slaughter of women and children. Some of them probably even Christian. Maybe some were Muslim, maybe some were Druze. Who knows? The fact of the matter is they're dead. And that's what was happening. And that's what was happening during the Obama administration. If she talked about it from that perspective, we're having a different conversation. We're having a different conversation. But what does she do? She drops an atom bomb, destroys her show. People are out of work. She's now another white racist. Valerie Jarrett looks good in comparison. It's stupid. It's ill-conceived. But go ahead and, drum up your ideas about some conspiracy and this whole thing with free speech. She made a choice. ABC has the right to terminate her. End of story. She may be picked up by Fox, but I doubt it. It's a little bit different. Like Tim Allen didn't come out, and call Barack Obama a sand monkey. Never. Tim Allen's show got canned because Tim Allen is not part of the left. So Fox picked it up, but he didn't have the same baggage. He doesn't have the same baggage. So I don't think that show is going to be picked up by Fox. All right, I've been going for 2 hours. 2 hours here. My point here, ladies and gentlemen, at the end of all of this, as I've taken you through some twisted and labyrinthine passages in my mind and in the world, is that things aren't always as black and white as they seem. And that ideas like free speech have consequences. And being able to exercise one's right to free speech or assembly, in the case of Tommy Robinson, still have consequences based on a legal proceeding and law, whether you like it or not. And do I champion free speech? Absolutely. You may not like what you heard today. When I got into the alt-right versus the alt-light, you may not like that. You may say, well, what is he doing? What is he talking about? I'm giving you an insight into how another group would view Tommy Robinson in this whole thing. And if Tommy Robinson had taken that stance, Tommy Robinson would have lasted a month at the most. We wouldn't even be having this discussion. And by the way, if Tommy Robinson was in with those guys, he'd last 5 minutes. Trust me on that too. So go ahead. You can call me whatever. I'm okay with it. I'm here to navigate through this. And ultimately, I can't care about what you think or how you approve of me. And this is something that I've had to go through, right? Because we all want to be liked. Like, I want to be liked. I got 3 planets in Libra. I want to be liked. At the end of the day, we got to sacrifice that. And I have to sacrifice being liked. If you want to unfollow me or unsubscribe to this channel, that's your right. But if you want to continue the dialogue, you want to go deeper, you want to untangle knots, you want to be challenged and tested and challenge and test me back, then stick around. I'll be back tomorrow. We'll talk more about this, maybe the aftermath of this show. And then after that, I'm taking the summer off. I'll be working on my website, creating some new channels and a new way to be able to listen to this, this broadcast. Let me get into the chat room here. Let's see if there's support, vitriol, or both. Let's see what the comments are. Well, that's interesting. I can't even get into the chat room. Oh, here we go. Shaky, future episodes, they canceled the show. The show's been canceled. Let's see. Susan Spitz. Susan says, I say I'm an anarchist. I just want to get to the top. Trying to get to the top of the comments. So hold on. If you could just like refrain from commenting for just a second, because I want to go from the top. And then the new comments, bring it down here. Let me just, please give me 1 second here. Just want to see what some of the comments are. Top, it doesn't want to, okay. I'm just going to try to read a few of these here. Susan says I'm an anarchist. Okay, Roseanne, I just try, hold up. Maury says has to do with consequences for actions. Yup, they have the right to say what they want, but they also have the responsibility to act. Absolutely. Also, she put the rest of the cast on shaky ground for future episodes. The show's canceled. If I was a cast member or a member of the crew, and Roseanne, I'd be pissed. You were smart enough, Robert, to determine the level from which the criticism comes from, rise above it. It's not functional. I'm going to be back tomorrow. We'll do a wrap up. It'll be part 3 because I'm sure I'll get like nasty feedback and fuck you and whatever. I don't care. You know, you said yesterday, die bitch. That was a comment on my YouTube page. You know what? I will die someday. And guess what? I'll die someday too. That's how this game works. All right. Use your head to discern what's real, your heart to stay open what's possible. I'm Robert Phoenix. Thanks for listening. And tomorrow will be part 3. And then we're going to take most of the summer off. And I'll be back. Like I said, I'll be doing the Sunday night live streams. I'll be doing some astrology videos. It's going to be a whole different like kind of stream of creation for the summertime. And I'll be back on the 23rd, God willing. And we'll have 50 Minutes of Flame in a bit of a different format, its own website, and we'll.
You're listening to 15 Minutes of Flame with Robert Phoenix.